Okay, the other day we left off with when you make mezainis, when you make adama, when you make hamaitzi. So we learned flour and water, or if the water is the majority of ingredients and is baked, and it's a flour, then the bracha is hamaitzi. If it's flour and juice is the majority, so then the bracha would be mezainis. But that's only if it's actually made into a flour. What happens if you have, a lot of times you have cereals, it says puffed wheat, rolled oats, or things like that, then the bracha would be ha'adama, because it's not made into a flour. Now to explain this a little bit, because you have, today they make what's called flourless bread. Like the Ezekiel breads, those type of things are called the flourless breads. So in the ingredients, it's not actually flour. It says it's not flour. But halachically, even though it's machlekes, but generally speaking, the halacha, the Alter Rebbe also uses the expression that if through the baking it sticks together in a way that it looks like flour, this way that bread, you can't tell the difference between that bread and the regular bread, even though legally in the definition of companies, it's flourless, but according to halacha would be flour. So therefore, on all these bread, Ezekiel bread and all that, you'd have to make hamaitzi, not mezainis. But a lot of times you have in the cereals, especially the Kellogg's and the Post and that, you'll see rolled oats, puffed oats, or things like that. So then it's not mezainis. Then it would be ha'adama. Just because there's barley, for instance, in the cholent, is not going to make the cholent mezainis, because it's not a flour. It's not made into a flour. Well, in that case, you'd either, if there are pieces of it, you'd make ha'adama, or if there's no pieces, it's made into a flour, not a flour, it's crushed up, and you don't see the pieces, then you'd make a shahakol. Okay? What?
Last week, whatever, you said that the Sfardim, they make a matzah. They make a matzah mezainis. Why would they make? Why would they make?
The reason why those. I know there's a plane flying overhead. The question is, I mentioned last week that many Sfardim during the year will make a mezainis and matzah. Regular matzah, they would make a mezainis. The question, huh? And the Pesach they would make hamaitzi, and during the year they make a mezainis, because it doesn't. What they say is it doesn't have what's called surah sapas. It doesn't look like bread. Okay, you have a lot of these crackers. It says on, I'm talking about the frum crack, the holy ones with the Hebrew words on it. So it says a lot of times Brachos mezainis, that the bracha is mezainis. But the truth of the matter, when you look in the ingredients, is basically flour and water. But there are poskim, we don't hold like that though. There are poskim that say that if it's a cracker, because it doesn't look like bread, so then it's not hamaitzi. It doesn't have what's called surah sapas.
Is there a share that you
No, then if you eat a lot of it and you again get full and that whole stuff, you would make hamaitzi on it. But they timed it that because it doesn't look, it's a thin cracker, it doesn't look like bread. So, but we don't hold like that, because matzah also doesn't look like bread, and we make hamaitzi on matzah or things like that. So it really doesn't matter. Okay, next thing.
Is it better not? Let's say you have something that you want to eat, you don't know the bracha for it. Is it okay just to say a bracha and eat it, or is it not?
No, the din is, and we're going to get there now, by the way. But the din is like this. You can't just say no. You're half right. The question is, what happens if I don't know what the bracha is? Or better yet, there's an argument in halacha what the bracha is. So then halacha says you make a shahakol. Because shahakol is good for everything. If somebody by mistake made a shahakol on an apple, okay, they don't have to remake a bracha. You make a shahakol on bread by mistake or whatever, you don't have to make a new bracha, because the bracha shahakol means shakol niya bidvari. Everything was made by Hashem's word. The same thing, for instance, there's a bracha Bari Pri Eitz, which means fruits from the tree, and you have Bari Pri Adam, which means fruits from the ground. Now, if somebody made on a vegetable Bari Pri Ha'etz, which means tree, it's not a good bracha because it's not from the tree. But if somebody made on an apple by mistake, they made a Bari Pri Adama, right? So then it's good. So what happens, bottom line, you have a fruit and there's nobody to ask and you want to eat the fruit and you don't know if it grows on the tree and you can't Google it, okay? So you don't know if it grows on the tree or it grows on the ground. You don't know if it's a fruit or a vegetable, basically. So what does halachos say you do? You make a Bari Pri Adama because then you're for sure good. If you don't know what the bracha is, then you make shahakol. But halachos says you can't just say, okay, instead I'll be ignorant, I won't learn, I won't go learn, I won't ask, I'll just make shahakol and everything. Halachos says you can't do that either. Because the Chachamim established certain brachos for certain things. So it says, go learn what the brachos are. But I'll give you a simple example. Rice, what we call rice, is a big argument in halacha what it is. Because in the Mishnah says like this, Orez is mezainis. Doichen is ha'adama. Okay, now there's an argument, what is orez, what is dochen? Some people say orez is rice and dochen is millet. Some people say orez is millet and dochen is rice. Okay, so there's a big argument in halacha, what bracha do you make on rice? So l'mashal, the Mishnah Berurah, and that's what most people do today, by the way, Mishnah Berurah holds, orez is rice, and therefore you make a mezainis on rice. But the after bracha, according to all opinions, is bari nefashos. You never make an alamichi on rice. The bracha is mezainis, but the after bracha, because not one of the 5 grains, so therefore everybody says you make a bari nefashos. But the Alter Rebbe doesn't paskin like that. The Alter Rebbe said because it's a machlekes, you should do one of two things: either eat it during the meal, where you washed anyway, or push comes to shove, you make a shahakol on it. So the Alter Rebbe paskins, bottom line, if you're not interested in washing it, you can't make 30 different brachas. What bracha do you make on rice? Shahakol. So by the way, so if you're eating Rice Krispies, if you follow the Mishnah Berurah, they will make a mezainis on Rice Krispies. We make a shahakol on Rice Krispies, because that's what the Alter Rebbe says to make. I mean, so then, halacha says, because there's an argument what the bracha should be, by making shahakol you're safe. But then, what?
Is there an opinion that you should try to eat it together with mezainis, with akadama and shahakol, or that's
There is no such opinion. No, the Alter Rebbe says you should eat during a meal, period. Now, the 3 possibilities is either mezainis, adama, or shahakol. So people say, instead of washing, you take a little mezainis, you take a little adama, you take a little shahakol, and you're covered. But there's no such opinion. It's just practical. That in Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe says, the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe says, the best time to eat rice is during a meal where you washed anyway already. But there is no opinion that says take one of the 3. That's what people do.
If you eat rice in the face meat, you just make a shahakol on the meat, and that's it.
According to the Alter Rebbe, yeah. According to the Mishnah Berurah, you make all mezainis on the rice.
You make stuff.
Hell for the Alter Rebbe and for Mishnah Berurah. Is there different types of hell that you go to for Mishnah Berurah and for the Alter Rebbe?
Different type of
Hell.
hell. There's a chassidish hell and a non-chassidic hell.
Let's say on stuffed cabbage, what would you make?
We're not, okay, when we get to ikar and top.
Rice. No, it's rice. It's made with rice.
We're not going there now. Let's first learn the dinner.
If I'm in a place and there is a bread on a table, there is no water for me to wash, or I want to run out, so I say shakol, have the bread and run out.
No, you can't do that. You have to wash. So there is a heter in Shulchan Aruch that the Alter Rebbe in Siddur doesn't hold of, and that is if there's no water around, if you hold the bread not in your hand, you hold it in a napkin or in a glove, whatever, paper, whatever. So because you're not holding it, but that's only, he says, if there's no water around for a few miles. Okay, the brother even Siddur, the Alter Rebbe says not to rely on that heter also.
Also, my friend. 2 different things.
Mama's 2 different things. One thing has absolutely nothing to do with it. What? A little louder, please.
For a Baal Nefesh, any have Rice Krispies also with
What's the definition of Bal Nefesh?
That's salted rights, right?
What's the definition of Bal Nefesh?
Yerushalayim.
Huh?
Yerushalayim.
No. In Shulchan Misha Yesh Lo Yerushalayim. What's a Bal Nefesh?
Isn't that the Lashon Mitzvah?
If you want to do Bal Nefesh, what it says in halacha, Bal Nefesh Shachim and Alatma, you wouldn't be doing anything a whole day. Because by eating there's, by Shabbos there's Bal Nefesh, by everything there's Bal Nefesh.
What is a Bal Nefesh? It's not clear.
Bal Nefesh means you wouldn't eat mezainis unless if it's sponge cake. No cake except sponge cake. The Zalt Rebbe says Bal Nefesh. The Zalt Rebbe was once traveling with the Pinchas Reizes, who was a very, very big chassid. He was all the things with Alter Rebbe, the Maimorim that Alter Rebbe said, he was based, most of them is what he wrote down. And it's brought down in the Sichos. The Alter Rebbe, when he would say Maimorim, would actually roll on the floor. From Grace's Pilots. They cushioned the whole area and the Pinchas Reizes used to roll after the Alter Rebbe to make sure not to miss a word. Okay, so they were once traveling, and I think the story is what the Mezainis Taka, and he made a Mezainis on cake, and the Alter Rebbe said, "What's this?" So he said, "Bal Nefesh." The Alter Rebbe said, "I thought you were a Bal Nefesh." So you want to be Bal Nefesh, in Hilchos Shabbos you wouldn't be doing anything, and in Hilchos Brachos and you wouldn't be eating anything. So Bal Nefesh is Bal Nefesh. Anyway, next is in the bracha of the general rules of brachas before eating. Okay? Now, the Gemara says in brachas there's a contradiction of two psukim. One pasuk says, Lashem ha'aretz umloya. What?
What's with lasagna and big CD?
Lasagna, your father will tell you that without any question is hametzi. Lasagna.
With
We
the
just-
cheese, with the cheese filling. and
We
everything.
discussed that already last time.
With everything in it.
With the ziti,
I might say.
What ziti? What about ziti?
I don't know how it's made. You have to
depends
know.
on its base.
Yeah, but you have to know, is it flour and water, flour and juice? A lot of noodles today, a lot of them are not necessarily flour and water. A lot of them could be flour and eggs.
It usually says that in the ingredients.
It says sometimes in the ingredients, sometimes it doesn't. If it says on the ingredients, like noodles.
Right, it says it.
Okay, so most of the time, noodles you cook. Remember, so we learned already last time, you take flour and water and cook it, it's mezainis anyway. It's only amazing when you bake it. So therefore, if you have flour and water, and you bake it, cook it, it's mezainis. It's mezainis. So what happens though if you make a noodle kugel that you don't cook, you just bake it, so then you have to know how the noodles are made. Is it flour and water or is it flour and juice? Egg noodles, for instance. I don't know, that doesn't mean... Egg challah, by the way, you know when you have egg challah,
Put a little thing there.
egg challah is a meitzi. All they do is it's flour and water, and then on top they smear a little egg on it to make it a little brownish. That's all, but it's not. Egg challah is not challah that's made with flour and eggs. It's made with flour and water, and they put a little bit eggs to smear it on the top a little bit. What?
Kugel that's flour and water would be a mitzi.
If you bake it or fry it?
Bake it.
Bake it would be a big shaila, that should be a meitzi.
Even if
I mean,
you have
not a
fillings?
shaila.
Even if you have all the fillings and everything.
What type of kugel are you baking? A pie kugel?
I don't know. I mean, they make apple.
It depends.
cinnamon.
If
They
it's
make an
made, as a dessert,
Sweet kugel.
then it's but even sweet kugels are not made for dessert. You serve it during the meal to fill you up. You don't. It's not something that you serve le'edon or l'tainig. You make a pie. An apple pie is made le'edon or l'tainig. Okay, but an apple pie anyway would probably be mezainis because of the crust. Okay.